Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, so that we get this on the record here, a couple of just quick, simple questions here. Monetary policy is decided by the FOMC of the Fed, correct?
Yes.
And there are 12 seats on the FOMC, of which 9 are currently filled, correct?
Actually, there are as many as 19 participants, but you're right, there can be 12 voters. Right now, so we have right now 16 of the 19 seats filled, or 9 of the 12 voters.
Okay, so the FOMC is today, right now, fully capable of determining monetary policy, and the Fed as a whole is fully capable of implementing that policy right now. Is that correct?
Yes, we will do our jobs.
Okay. I was glad to hear your emphasis on the importance of price stability. Here's my concern. You know, it's a little bit easier to raise interest rates, to normalize, to fight inflation at a time when the economy is booming. What I'm a little bit worried about, and I fully acknowledge nobody knows how this is going to play out, but I think it's fair to say that this war has changed the risk profile a little bit with respect to inflation, as you just alluded to. There's certainly some upward pressure on energy and maybe beyond. And all else being equal, it probably increases the risk that we'll be looking at downward revisions in growth. Nothing certain about that, but the risk is higher. And so I wonder if you could share with us your thoughts on the importance of fighting inflation if we find ourselves in a situation where growth is less robust than what we're hoping for now.
So I would agree on both the supply and demand side. There's a lot of uncertainty. The oil prices are higher. That typically does weigh on spending to some extent. But at the same time, we have households and businesses that are in such strong financial shape where it's not clear what those effects are going to be. So as I mentioned yesterday, I do think that it's going to be appropriate for us to continue to proceed along the lines that we had in mind before the Ukraine invasion happened, and that was to raise interest rates at the March meeting and to continue through the course of the year based on incoming data and the evolving outlook to engage in a series of rates. I would say in this very sensitive time at the moment, I think it's appropriate for us to be careful in the way we conduct policy simply because things are so uncertain and we don't want to add to that uncertainty, but that's where it leaves me.
I just hope that that the actual practice going forward at the Fed is consistent with what I think you were alluding to earlier, and that is the need for price stability as a precondition for maximizing the well-being of American workers. If we're in a world where we don't have price stability, they don't have job security, they don't have income security. It's just so important. I sure hope that we exceed all of our expectations about growth this year, but I don't know that. Let me shift to ask you this. In your view, is it consistent with the statutory mandate of the regional Fed banks to engage in political advocacy, and specifically a racial justice campaign or efforts to amend a state constitution? Is that within the proper domain of regional Fed banks?
So, as we've discussed, the reserve banks have generally had and exercised a degree of freedom of oversight from the Board of Governors, in their research activities, in their policy thinking activities. And that has always been thought to be a benefit, including by me, because it avoids the kind of groupthink you could get if you had one economic staff in one building and that's where all the governors were. So it's been a feature rather than a bug of the system for a long time. I would echo, though, I strongly share the view that everything we do in the system needs to be clearly linked in ways that people understand to our mandate, and that is one of the very most important underpinnings of our independence. If we're not doing that, then the case for our independence immediately becomes weaker. So,
and I don't think anybody can make the case that amending a state constitution with respect to how a state pays for primary and secondary education has anything to do with that mandate. Let me ask you the last question. The Fed has embraced the idea of requiring climate scenario analyses for banks, and the justification is this is an important way for banks to understand the nature of the risk that they face. Whatever one thinks of that, Is it your view that among the Fed's responsibilities is to determine the pace at which the American economy transitions to a lower carbon economy?
No.
Okay, thank you.